All aboard. Welcome to the Freedom Train. I'm Dose Ward, and as always, I'm here with the man with the plan, Mr. Patrick Irvin. You know how we do, Patrick. Go ahead and tell the people what's on your mind.
What's up to the people?
Power to the people. Yes,
all right.
Yes, sir. Welcome everyone to the Freedom Train, radio designed to free your mind. What's been going on with you, Patrick, since last week, man?
Man, it's been busy, man. You know, out here making these moves, trying to make things happen for us, so we can stop begging other people to do things for us, especially things that we can do for ourselves. So, you know, it's just been humping, making phone calls, trying to get this whole urban intellectuals thing really moving forward. You know, for everybody that doesn't know, that's what I do for the community. Urbanintellectuals.org.
We got time. Can you tell us a little more about urban intellectuals and your involvement with urban intellectuals?
Well, the thing, yes, actually, and I'm trying to figure out where to start because Urban Intellectuals is doing so much. But basically, Urban Intellectuals is a pro-black group and a black media company. The black media company is urbanintellectuals.com, and it features a news website as well as a radio piece. You're listening to the radio piece right now.
Right.
And the goal of that website is to have black people be able to get information about the world from their perspective, from a black perspective. And a secondary and more powerful purpose of it is to recapture and reframe and redefine the image of black people. We need to recapture our own images and redefine it in our own light so that, you know, we can take ownership of it and we can be proud of it and not have other people telling us what black people are like. You know, especially when they're telling us black people are like something that we know we're not like, which happens to be like all the time. And then there is the nonprofit side of the house. And these are two separate corporations. The nonprofit is a subsidiary of the media portion. The nonprofit side of the house is a advocacy group for Black America, black people only. We are not a minority group. We're a black-only group. As a matter of fact, if you go to www.urbanintellectuals.org, one of the very first things you'll see is that we are a black advocacy group. But we also center on empowerment through education. We all believe that black people simply don't know. And not only does black people not know, the world at large doesn't know. You know, you have people who think that we're in a post-racial society because they don't know what the numbers are. Or you have people that think that racism is a thing of the past because they don't know what the numbers are. Or you have people that think because I just came over from Great Britain in 1993, I didn't benefit from racism or slavery because they don't know that racism and slavery existed in Great Britain, and and you know, we still have a lot of things that are residual effects from that ideology that confer benefits simply on you having white skin in America. So yes, you did benefit, and yes, more than likely your ancestors at least knew somebody that owned the slave, whether you were here or in Great Britain or in Portugal or in Spain or in wherever you may have been. So that's really not a excuse. So that's what we center on. We center on empowering people through education. And even in that education, it's centered largely on economics. because economics is everything.
Yeah.
So, people talk about education. Look, there is no education without economics. People talk
Yeah.
about, well, I need to be, I need to do this, or I need to look. You can't do anything but die without economics. We have to
Right.
focus on economics, and we have to understand economics is not something that can be given to us. It's something that we have to create on our own. Even if America gives us 20% of the nation's wealth, and we're up to 23%, and now we have, after they give us 20%, 23% of the nation's wealth. If we don't have an economic plan or economic structure in place, we're going to get that 20% back to them, plus half of the 3% we already have, and then be in the exact same situation. So we focus on economics.
Right, and see, that's what I was just going to say. That's why we have to put an emphasis on economics. And we also, I agree with you, because, I'm big on education myself. Once we understand how important having a proper education is, and when I say proper education, I don't mean a formal education. I mean an education that's designed to help you understand the importance of you uplifting yourself and the people around you. Once we have that proper education in place, then the economics will take care of itself, because within that education, we're going to teach economics. We're going to stress economics. We're no longer be in the days where people say, well, man, I had to do what I just had to do. Like, I'm sorry. I understand that sometimes some people get in jam and bad decisions are made because you got bad choices. But how can we get to a point to where if somebody is in a bad spot, they don't have to do what they have to do in a negative way? How can we get to a point where doing what I have to do is still something positive, that the person don't have to degrade themselves or, to have to do those things to have to survive? How can we create conditions within our communities, like when we are in need, then we have systems in place? And I think, like you said, that goes back to education, because within the education, we're going to hit various aspects of different things that people need to do. Self-esteem. Like, if you look at the neighborhood, the neighborhoods reflect the morale of the people that dwell within the neighborhoods. If the people within the neighborhoods have high morale, the neighborhood is beautiful. If the morale is low, the neighborhood looks like a hood. And these are things that need to be touched upon, like you said. Also, one important part is within these neighborhoods that have low morale is a low understanding of economics and low economics, period. So all of that goes hand in hand. I totally agree. So.
And we got to get people to, and that's the goal of the Urban Intellectuals nonprofit movement. And we're doing a lot of things behind that. We're trying to set up chapter houses in as many cities as we can set them up in.
Right.
And those chapter houses are going to be the centers for that education. We're working on curriculums, because one of the things that nobody likes to talk about is the fact that we fought to get integrated in their schools, but we didn't fight to get integrated in their curriculums. So, you got a seat in a white school that had more resources, but even though the resources are attached to the children, and as they leave, the money leaves too, especially nowadays. But we fought to get a seat in the class, but now we're sitting in the class learning that we're nothing. And so we have to address that as well. And so UI is also working to try and build a Black history curriculum, but an overall curriculum for that somebody can sit down with this UI curriculum and either homeschool their kid from K through 12, or we can sit it into a school and have them use that from K through 12 as well in chunks or in its entirety. So, we have, education is extremely, extremely important, but we have to, like you said, we have to define education. Education is more than what they're learning in school nowadays. Education is being able to take knowledge of the past and take knowledge of the real world and use that knowledge to be successful, to be able to use that to move forward. If you know a whole bunch of stuff, but you can't do anything with it, then you're not educated. I mean, education is supposed to be a preparation for a successful life.
Right.
Are black kids really being prepared for a successful life? Even the ones that go all the way up to their PhD program. Are they really being prepared for a successful life after their 18 years of school? And the answer is no.
And that's the sad part. And that's the sad part, because they're not prepared. As a matter of fact, man, I'm watching ESPN last night, and I see it's a documentary about the football player Randy Moss. And Randy Moss is from Rand, West Virginia. Now, let me see if you recall. Do you recall when when we were in high school and we would refer to people as Southside legends? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you clear on the South Side what a South Side legend is. For those who don't know what we're talking about, a South Side legend is somebody who was a great star in high school, a great athlete, just amazing athlete. Then after they graduated high school, they're hanging out in front of the corner stores, or they're drug dealers. Now they're just nothing in life. Now, when we were in high school, we kind of made light of that. We didn't really think too much about it. But looking at it on this documentary, well, they call this liquor store Rand University because they say we expect you to be a all-state performer in baseball, basketball, football, and track. We expect you to win rings. We expect you to win state championships. So after you graduate, we also expect you to be hanging out on this corner with us in front of this liquor store drinking beer every day. And I'm thinking that has to be some of the saddest, excuse my language, I gotta say, that's some of the saddest shit I've ever seen. And it's ridiculous that the adults are saying this, not the kids. The adults are saying this. The adults are saying we expect our youth to be corner standers and liquor drinkers after they graduate high school. Because one of the guys, they asked one of the guys, well, what could you do to change it? And his response was, well, if I knew what to do, I would do it. Right now, I don't know. So basically, it's a sense of hopelessness. And how did we get here? What happened for us to get to a point to where we are strong enough to come out of the worst form of human treatment in history, but yet we put ourselves in a place where we feel hopeless, and we feel like tomorrow is really not real, and we feel like we can't dream, because they literally said we don't dream past high school. How did we get here?
Man, I personally feel like we got complacent, and nobody can deny that. After they signed the civil rights legislation, a lot of people got complacent, and to be honest, there were a lot of people that didn't agree with the whole civil rights thing as well. We got to be real about that too. There were a lot of people that were content with the way things were, and they were happy building in their own communities. While they might have been upset and frustrated at I won't say the occasional, but at the lynchings and all the other mistreatments, they were still happy within themselves. So we have to acknowledge that as well, and I think that's critical because black people keep talking about we need unity, and we have to understand, look, people have accomplished great things without unity. You don't need all 40 million of us to agree.
Right.
But even in that, I think we got complacent after the civil rights. I think we got extremely complacent. The Black Power movements got shut down. Then we got scared. So now we're complacent and we're scared. And then that just opened the door for a lot of other things to roll in. And now they're slowly starting to roll back all of the progress we've made. Even when it comes to Black History Month, they're no longer teaching it. So now kids can no longer identify with their blackness. They don't know where they come from. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know what they're capable of. They don't know who fought and what has transpired so that they have the right to do some of the things that they do nowadays. They're completely ignorant. So in the state, in a way, we brought ourselves, and I emphasize we brought ourselves, because a lot of people want to say that white people did this or white people did that. No, black people fought in the Civil War for our own freedom. White people weren't fighting for our freedom. They were fighting for somebody else. You know, we keep having to say that. Lincoln did not free the slaves, and he didn't want to free the slaves, and the Civil War wasn't fought to free the slaves. The slaves that were fighting, and there were some slaves fighting for the Confederacy as well, but most of the slaves in the Union that were fighting off the hope and the belief that if they proved themselves, they could be, you know, they could make things better for themselves. We freed ourselves. And then in civil rights, we freed ourselves again.
Right.
And then, you know, we got complacent. Then we got scared. Then you can't forget about the 100 years of conditioning that they laid on us after slavery, which I think in a lot of ways was more harmful than what happened during slavery, but we can get into that later. And then you just have a recipe for the growing divide between the man and the woman. And then you just have a recipe for the destruction of a community when you introduce a catalyst. And that catalyst, as we can all recognize at this point, was drugs. And now, you know, we are where we are, where we're unattached, we're ignorant, we're vulnerable, and we're gullible. Unfortunately, that's something that black people never seem to get away from, is being gullible. So
and you know, that's interesting that you say that, because I was talking with my girlfriend the other day, and I was telling her about that point there, that we are gullible, and that's one of the things that I recognize that a lot of us don't understand, and we continue to be gullible because we continue to not learn from our history. If you read the book Destruction of Black Civilization, they have a section where they're talking about the Maasai. And the Maasai have a prophecy of when the first time that they allow a white person within their village, that's going to be the beginning of the fall of their you know, their supremacy at that time. And basically it happened. And if you read a lot of the history books, whether black people or white people wrote it, you always see where, even in another example is in the book Things Fall Apart, when they trusted the missionaries to come in. Missionaries told them that their gods and their cultures were stupid, and they believed them, and then everything went downhill from there.
Mm-hmm.
And we keep being gullible. We keep allowing, but when we talk about this, a lot of people take this and they run with the effect of, okay, now y'all hate white people. No, it's not a fact. A matter of hating white people. Is us telling the truth and us being able to learn from our history and accept the truth. And Muhammad Ali had a great analogy, and I'm sure you've heard me say this before, but this is a great analogy. He was saying, imagine you have 1,000 snakes coming towards your house at one time. 900 of those snakes are poisonous, and 100 of those snakes are non-poisonous. Now, the non-poisonous snakes are on your side. The non-poisonous snakes do not want to hurt you. Matter of fact, they're willing to help you. Now, do you let 100 snakes in your house to try to pick out, do you let 1,000 snakes in your house to try to pick out 100, or do you leave all 1,000 snakes outside of your house? And when he said that made me think. But that's something everybody should think about. Are we really going to go through the process of trying to figure out who's good and who's not, or are we going to concentrate on ourselves and build ourselves up and stop being so gullible?
And see, here's where black people need to understand, first off, that racism is not what you've been taught that it is. Racism is not, I hate you, I'm going to kill you, nigga, blah, blah, blah. I mean, yeah, that's bigotry, that's prejudice. That's a whole lot of other things. More specifically, that's probably bigotry, unexplained, or just the unrepressed hatred. You know, racism is subtle. Racism is culture at this point in America. And racism is a culture in any place where it exists. One culture or one group of people over another. It's a cultural thing. So it's not that you're going to find white people that want to kill you and want to see you do this. The fact is, only a small minority of white people actually want to actually harm or actually have the balls to actually harm black people. The problem is with racism is that it manifests itself in the apathy towards those individuals that do harm black people. It makes it okay to harm black people. It makes it justifiable to mistreat black people. It makes it not a big deal. And when those people try to speak back against the things that are happening to them, that same apathy, that same culture of racism makes them feel bad for speaking out on the fact that they're being oppressed. It labels them race baiters, race mongers, hate speakers, hate fillers, blah, blah, blah. It labels them the problem instead of labeling the culture or the white people that do want to hurt us the problem. It says black people should change the way they name their children because white people are uncomfortable with black people with black names. That's racism. It says that, you know, we have to come to grips with this, and once you come to grips with the fact that it's a cultural thing, you'll begin to understand, look, you can have your white friends and still be pro-black because white people have nothing to do with black people. I have white friends. I'll be the first to tell you that. And they all know I'm pro-black. They all know that. So, and I don't feel guilty about having white friends because I understand what racism is. So, I mean, you know, you got to get to that point where you can understand it. I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
Well, see that, and that's something that we have to do. We have to make sure that black people have a full understanding, a consistent understanding of what racism is. Because I heard Dr. Francis Chris Wilson say this: if you don't understand the system, if you don't truly understand the system and the culture of racism, everything else will only confuse you. And that's where we are now. Is like you're saying, if I embrace my heritage and I have white friends, then I'm racist. You know, I have friends who think that because they have white friends that racism isn't real, and I have to get them to realize that, okay, let's think about it. So you mean to tell me that the total system of racism is going to cease to exist because you are friends with white people? Are you going to tell me that, so you're meeting these people, grandparents and all of their whole families and stuff, they invite you to their house? Now, I'm not saying all white people are like that, and of course we know that. But come on, let's be real. Like you said, it's a culture. Racism is a part of the culture of America, and if we don't understand that, until we understand that, we're going to continue to be victims of racism until we understand what we're dealing with. The culture of racism is alive and well in America, and the culture of racism is what helped make America what it is today. Study what Manifest Destiny truly is, and then you'll understand the culture and the system of racism.
People have got to, and that's one thing we've got to do. We've got to stop running from history, because when you run from history, it's doomed to repeat itself. We already saw it in the 1860s. We were fighting in a war to get free from slavery. We were fighting in a war to get free from slavery, and we freed ourselves from slavery.
Right.
And then in the 1960s anyway, we had to do it again.
Yep.
You know, so what are we going to be doing in 2060 if we don't recognize this pattern? You know, are we going to be fighting for our freedom yet again in 2060 and then again in 2160? Are we doomed to fight for our freedom the 60s of every century? You know, people really need to pay attention to these types of things. They need to really understand, look, it wasn't always illegal for a black person and a white person to be together. People think there was this transition from slavery to Jim Crow, where one day there was slavery, the next day there was Jim Crow. It didn't happen like that. There was a gap of about 10, 15 years in there where black people were complete citizens. Research that time period and research why it ended, and then draw the parallels with what we're seeing today. Draw the parallels with what we're seeing today with the resurgence of the KKK and other white supremacist groups, with the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan, the police, resuming their original roles of putting black people back in their place. You know, we have to get back into. We can't run away from history. We can't run away from the shame of it. We've got to embrace it so that we can prevent it from happening again. And to be honest, every black person in America should be proud of their history, especially if you can trace your ancestry back to a slave, because that means you're one of the strongest human beings on the planet. That is nothing to be ashamed of. You should be proud of that.
Right. Right. I mean, right. We not only overcame, but we learned how to thrive. We did learn, and we can't say we didn't learn how to thrive, because we have learned to thrive. Now, what we haven't learned how to do is thrive as a total unit. But individually, we've had pockets. Like you said, if we're really looking at it, and we're only owning between 3 and 5% of the wealth in this country. All right, now let's break that down, right? Now, how many Oprah-like people exist within that 3 to 5% that really take up a whole lot of that 3 to 5%? You know, so how much? Because you really got to think about that. How much of that 3% does Oprah take up herself? How much does all the other millionaires take up? How much does the other black billionaires take up of that 3 to 5%? And then for all those millions of black folks who don't have that type of money, how's that 3% split up between us?
Well, that's why when I talk to people, I don't talk to them about the average wealth of a black family, because that number is kind of skewed by the Oprahs, the Jordans, the Jackson family, all these people with these outrageous sums of money. It boosts the average up tremendously. And likewise, you're positive to hear white people say the same thing about the Bill Gateses and the this and that. They boost their numbers up considerably as well. But that's why I look at the median. The what's the absolute middle number, and let's go from there, because that gives a more accurate depiction, in my opinion, of what the middle of the road black people are making, the middle of the road white people are making, the middle of the road people, period, in general. It gives a more accurate picture of what they're making. And when we look at that comparison, we find that the median white family has a net worth of $134,000. That's still very decent. That means that over half of the population is above that number. Or not over half, but half of the population is above that number, because the median is the number right smack in the middle. And then you have a section where about, about another 25%, maybe 20%, are still doing pretty well. So, as a whole, you can say 70 to 75% of white people are doing pretty well in life right now. Now, then you go and look at the median black family's net worth of $11,000.
Right.
And you find, what in the world? Okay, so you got Oprah, you got Bill Gates, you got Michael Jordan, you got blah, blah, blah. And then there's just this huge, drastic drop-off in income. And that's where most of the rest of us fall in line. And people like to say it's because of spending habits. Black people and white people have the exact same spending habits when they have the same amount of money. So, again, we're going back to an economics issue here.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, that's true. And it's something that we have to be able to see for ourselves and understand how this literally impacts us in a positive and a negative way. Like, what are we literally doing to help improve this? And we can't. One of the things that is hurting us is we have little pockets of people who have understanding. But I do agree with what you said earlier that we're not going to have everybody totally united in this fight. That's just not going to happen. But we just need not enough people, but the right people.
Mhm.
And once the right people get connected together, it can do, like, you can even, I mean, it's showed, like, in the movie 300. Of course, it's a Greek thing, but it didn't take all of Greece to stand up to Persia at first. It took a little bit of Greece. And then once those 300 dudes stood up, all of Greece decided, all right, well, we got to save ourselves. But it took some brave people to actually stand up and say, you know what, we're not going to take this anymore. And that's what the black community needs, just a contingent that's going to stand up and say, and we do have, and not to say we don't have that, because we do have that, but there are people in the black community, like ourselves and other people, who are constantly doing things to help the black community. It's just, we just got to continue to do it. And we got to make sure that we're not out there just preaching to the choir. Like, we're getting out there helping people who actually need the help. And doing what we need to do, and not turning our nose up at people, because that's one thing I don't like to see, is for you to be like, my brother this and my sister that, but then when you come across somebody who really needs the help, you know, you kind of turn your nose up at them because you feel like you're better than them, and that's not going to help us. That's actually playing into the Eurocentric trap. Like, that's what they want us to do. That's why they created that little fake Willie Lynch stuff, which actually we turned into a self-fulfilling prophecy because we internalized it so much.
I mean, it's real out here, good brother. I mean, and this is, you know, like one of those topics we really wish people would, and there are a bunch of different people talking about this stuff all the time, and we really wish people would, you know, just tune in and just pay attention and give these types of conversations a chance, rather than turning their nose up and saying they stuck in the past. You know, even when I disagree with people, I still do my best to hear them out, because they might bring something later on that might, you know, get me. They might drop a nugget on me that I might not even realize it's in my pocket until a couple of weeks or maybe years later. They might, you know, make me think about things in a way I haven't thought of before. And if all else fails, at least now I understand where they're coming from, which means that I can now, you know, build with them and relate to them a little bit better than I could before. But black people have got to stop. Look, I really don't even care if white people are running from this conversation. I mean, honestly, if I was white, I would run from it too. But I don't understand, and I really wish black people would stop running from these conversations. We need to have these conversations about what's happened, about our image, about education, about economics, about, you know, we need to have these conversations on a group level, not just on the individual level, not just saying, well, I'm conscious, y'all better get there too. You know, and at this point, I'm almost convinced that saying that you're conscious is a sign of being unconscious. Because I tell you what, man, some of the things I've been seeing from the conscious community of late, you know, it's just been, you know, I'd rather deal with the people that don't know no better. At least they don't know no better. Like, you know better, and you still with this buffoonery. Like, what's your problem?
Right. So, I mean, we got to do better, man, and that's what one of the problems is we can't handle the truth. Basically, we continue to go along with the narrative that this is not something that affects me, or this is not something that's important to me, or this is not something that I'm ready to deal with now. And it's how many. Like, look around, look at our, like, really look at our culture, look at the things that we're doing, and look at the things that we value. And you can see that it's time for us to grow up. Like, I think the rapper Nas said in one of his songs that black Americans are seen as the teenagers of this world. You know, we look at as the ones that need to grow up. And in a sense, that's true. But also we do have to, like you said, we do still have to look at why we're in this position, in these conditions, and you can't discount the impact of slavery and racism. You can't do that. But we also have to take accountability for our own actions. Like, I'm holding the book in my hand that I just brought this weekend. It's by author J.A. Rogers, and it's about your history. And it's basically it's a history book about maybe 100 or 200 just black people throughout the world who've done significant things, and it's kind of made into like a comic book. But it's just books like this that exist that tell you about the great history of black people within the world that we'll go into a bookstore and overlook.
Mm-hmm.
And investing in ourselves, like I said, our economics are not going to get better unless we invest in ourselves, unless we spend with ourselves, unless we constantly go out of our way to patronize ourselves. Like my girlfriend got mad at me this weekend because I told her I didn't want to go to a restaurant. I don't want to drive to a city like Atlanta and purposely go to a white-owned restaurant. And she got mad, and she was thinking I'm being closed-minded. But what I was trying to get her to understand is the city we live in here in Tallahassee has a handful of black restaurants, so your options are limited. We have one fine dining black restaurant. So if we're not going to that night, then we have no choice. But in a city like Atlanta, we have no excuse to not go to a black restaurant. There's plenty of fine dining that's owned by black people in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to travel to Atlanta to purposely spend money at a restaurant that's white owned. And the reason why I want to go to this restaurant is because it's at the top of an 80-floor building and it spins around. Mm-hmm. Hey man, I don't care about the building spinning. The building can do the electric boogaloo. I don't care. I'm not going to travel to a city who has an abundance of black restaurants and purposely spend my money with a white restaurant. I'm just not going to do that. I'm sorry. But we have to have these mindsets. So we have to be rigid in what we're doing and stay steadfast and move towards black empowerment.
Right.
So
100%, 100%, and that's what and to keep it short, I won't go too far into this, but that's another issue we have, being labeled closed-minded.
Right.
It's interesting how black people are viewed as the most closed-minded people in the world.
Right.
Even though we readily accept everybody else's opinion and point of view of us.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
We're closed-minded when we want to stand up for ourselves and when we want to support our people, or this, that, and the third. Why is it that nobody else is closed-minded for ignoring us?
Right. Or why isn't it somebody else is closed-minded for the way they depict us in their negative light?
Right.
Going back to the birth of a nation. And I keep trying to get people to understand, stop saying that these TV shows and things are just entertainment. You need to study the history of black cinema in America. Study it. If you study the history of black cinema in America, you will get a good understanding of why when people talk about shows like Scandal and those housewives shows, why people get upset. And it's because it's the same narrative that's being displayed over and over and over. And these narratives within these early movies starting in 1913 help shape the negative stereotypes or help reinforce the negative stereotypes of black people and help encourage the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. And so basically these things were designed to basically make black people look like we the ones with the problem, and we're not. We're constantly the victims. Constantly. So once we understand that, we can move forward. And I'm looking for this for the title of this book. I read it in college. I think it's Toms, Coons, Mammies, Mulattoes, something like that. It went over here we go. Toms, Coons, Mulattoes, Mammies, and Bucks. And who's the author? Donald Bogle. Donald Bogle is the author, and once again, the name of the book is Toms, Coons, Mulattoes, Mammies, and Bucks, an interpretive history of blacks. What is it? An interpretive history of blacks in American films. And what's interesting about this book, like it goes in and it really gives you a history of black cinema from beginning to end in America, and why these roles were played and why these roles are still played out. So it's like it all goes back to education.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I'm gonna need to go cop that book myself.
yeah. It's I know I got when I brought it at first. When I first brought it, I wasn't going to really read it, but I had a good teacher, so he basically sold the book pretty good. So when I read the book, I kind of got caught up, and I was like, okay, now. So you learn something, you learn, and see that's what made me look at Denzel's Oscar a little different and look at Halle Berry's Oscar differently. And I wouldn't have been able to look at those in different light if I hadn't read this book or been exposed to information about what racism truly is. So.
Well, good brother, we running long. I don't know how long you want to run the show today.
Well, taking normal time. But before we go, I do want to give some shouts out, though. Congratulations to Miss Andrika Bryant. If people didn't know, she took a trip to New York City, and she was made an appearance on the Meredith Vieira show, and she said it's going to be showing Monday. I don't know the station, so you might want to contact Andrika Bryant on Facebook so you can find out exactly the station. But the fact that she's on national TV with her do-it-yourself homegrown products and her her Kiss by the Sun products that she's using, so she's making major moves. So if you didn't know, now you know.
Yep.
And remember www.creativenichellc.com. That's her website.
Good on you, Andrika. I'm proud of you.
Oh yeah. And also a shout out to our past guests as well, Mr. Keith Turner. Check him out, www.Jules, 4, the letter D, Minds, JulesForTheMinds.com. Miss Rashida Marshall with her Skillfully Sculpted at www.skillfullysculpted.com, and also Professor Carl Tone Jones at that's
www.whataboutus.com.
There you go, www.whataboutus.com. And, give a shout out to all of our guests, all the people who called in, because, we got a good show here. We got a good platform to give information and also shine light on those who are the doers in our community, and that's what we want to do, make sure we continue to uplift people's minds and let them know what's going on in the community and who's behind it. So.
And if you guys want, if you had trouble writing all that down, just go over to urbanintellectuals.com/radio and click on the Freedom Train picture, and it'll load up all of their pictures as well as their websites when you click on their names or their pictures, and you can go from there. So, and you can listen to the shows that we did with them. All of the shows have been extremely powerful, from Brother Keith Turner giving us dropping the poetry on us, which was crazy, all the way up to the last show we had with Andrika, who just came through like a whirlwind with all of her positive, vibrant energy, and she was just giving it to us, and Rashida Marshall and Professor Carlton Jones, they all gave it to us real.
Right.
And the next half of the season is going to be just as powerful. We got some crazy guests lined up. Brother Joseph Ward is putting in the work, and it's going to be crazy. Y'all definitely stay tuned.
Black awareness is in the building, and I just feel good about what we have here, and I feel good about moving forward. And matter of fact, Mr. Patrick, why don't you tell us where we can find you and contact you? What's your website? Let us know about you.
Well, at this point, you can find me at blacknesslives.com.
Okay.
Or you can go to thinkfreebefree.com, although I'm repurposing my Think Free Be Free brand at the moment. So you can find me at blacknesslives.com, or you can find me at urbanintellectuals.org, where I am the CEO of the nonprofit portion. So, those are the two places you can find me. You go to blacknesslives.com. You're going to see a bunch of videos up of me talking about culture and business, and you're also going to see my apology to black women. And if you go to urbanintellectuals.org, you can see where you can join the UI movement for $24 a year. That's less. That's $2 a month. That's chump change.
Right.
But for $24 a month, or $24 a year, I'm sorry, you can help fund the revolution, because it won't be televised, but it needs to be funded.
Right. Yes, and make sure you all can check me out at www.liveskilled.com. That's my blog site. Check out my blogs, my videos, my podcast, everything that I have going on. It's been a pleasure building with my brother Patrick. We've been holding it down for about over a year or so now, just on this level. We've known each other for a while and been able to move forward with couple different projects and things to actually build toward helping, making sure we do our part in improving the black community. So, I appreciate the efforts and stuff that you've been putting in, my brother.
Oh, and likewise, same with you, man.
Yes, sir. So, you guys, make sure you catch us next week, same place, same time, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time here on Freedom Train Radio, because we got a nice guest lined up for you next week. I don't want to spoil the surprise just yet, but when you meet our guest next week, I'm guarantee you he's gonna blow your socks off. So make sure you all tune in next week on the Freedom Train, and we love you all, and we'll see you all next week.